Hi, this is Boyd Delonzo. In less than 2 months' time, Pope Benedict XVI will make his first journey to Latin America. While the Catholic Church has long enjoyed the support of over 60% of the region's inhabitants, the Vatican has long been wary of the widening rift that is creeping between South America and Rome. Headlines were made this week as the father of the Church condemned the writings of Reverend John Sobrino, a Jesuit priest whose work and advocacy champions the poor and many underrepresented members of Latin American society. The Vatican issued a 14-page notification on Tuesday, March 13th, which formally barred Sobrino from teaching, working or affiliating himself with any Catholic university. The Reverend has been active for over 20 years and, despite his following, is accused of demoralizing the Catholic faith and humanizing Jesus to the point of diminishing his divinity. Reverend Sobrino is currently based in El Salvador, where he has influenced many of the region's parishes who use his writings to reach people on a basic level that they can relate to. Many of the priests who have followed the writings of Sobrino since the 1980s have undertaken a social agenda which champions the rights of the poor and disenfranchised, and have often supported leftist political parties or politicians. For many locals in San Salvador, he is referred to as a hero who has led many to embrace God. Sobrino and other liberation theologians claim to seek to find Christ in the poor and to work for their good. On the surface, this may seem like an honest agenda, but a closer examination reveals a tenuous clash of ideas that seems to have resurfaced in the wake of Latin America's shift to the left. During his papacy in the 1980s, John Paul II spoke out against the proliferation of Jesuit ideology, which he believed to be Marxist, and spoke out against the rise in support given to communist guerrillas by the Catholic Church. Violent insurrections, as those experienced in Peru, El Salvador, Argentina, Bolivia, Nicaragua, and Colombia, were met with a wave of brazen activism on the part of the Catholic religious community. As the basis of the revolutions were to be found in class struggles, Jesuit priests undertook the responsibility of defending the impoverished residents of their parish, many of whom in turn took up arms against the government. Proponents of liberation theology have long maintained their work is precisely the sort Jesus would have undertaken if he were alive today. The Vatican is highly skeptical of these claims. The Vatican maintains that the Church's business is not to become involved in partisan politics. In 1990, John Paul II addressed a crowd in Mexico, expressing growing concern that priests were becoming so involved in class struggles that they had lost sight of their purpose as clergymen. He condemned liberation theology and deemed it unacceptable. After the end of the Cold War and the cessation of violence, the issue of liberation theology was pushed to the back burner for several years and was recently met with renewed condemnation as the rural poor and Latin American communities seek momentum and cohesion for confronting social issues such as poverty, political representation, and good governance. While the Vatican has attempted to silence Reverend Sobrino, his message and ideology have traveled far enough that by now, his work already holds an iconic place in Latin America's revolutionary history. American Reverend James Martin calls him a theological giant and feels it is unlikely that proponents of his work will likely abandon their ideological roots. With the rise of populist leaders in Latin America, it remains doubtful that liberation theology and the concept of Jesus as liberator and champion of the poor will wilt away anytime soon. This report was written by Erica Salerno.